To hear him talk about that, it seems so long ago, and I guess essentially it was. I know I moved to Keller back in 92, 93. I don't know what it was. But I am Coach Smith, and I direct Rock Bottom Outreach. And I'm going to go pretty quick because I want Mike to be able to share for a couple minutes too. One thing we do at Rock Bottom Outreach is we call it Real Talk. Who knows what Real Talk is? Ever heard of it? Nobody ever heard the term Real Talk? Real talk is the truth. It's the honest truth. It's something you need to hear. That's what we're going to do. I want to talk about being Christ-centered. Being actually cross-centered is the term I want you to lead with today. And I want to challenge yourself when you walk out of here today, you look at your life, are you cross-centered? Because if we do not stay cross-centered, Satan will have his way with us. Let me tell you about my family. I've been a coach for a long time. I've been an athlete my entire life. That's been my passion. From the time I was 7 years old, I grew up from a dysfunctional family, and I said when I got older, that wasn't going to be me. And sure enough, I married the all-American woman, a young lady from church that I was proud to call my bride. And we were content on having kids and living a normal life. And we didn't drink, didn't do drugs, ended up had 3 boys, Tad, Toby, and Ty. I tell you their names because I want it to be real to you. After we got married in 92, 93, moved to Keller, started training some of these guys. I used to be a strength conditioning coach, and that's, I know Scott from church, Coach Lowe, and I know his brother. I used to train both of his brothers when they were over at Keller. And like you said, I believe touched a lot of lives, but here's the biggest challenge this morning. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I've heard several of you talk about your family and your dad's not in your life. And it's funny, a lot of time, we learn from our past, but that's exactly what it is. It's the past. And you don't want that to affect your future in a negative, but you learn from it, make it a positive. So I'm going to tell you what happened to me. My family, we were very cross-centered. We went to church. We're the all-American family with our boys. Kids came to our home. We were part of the FCA. I grew up in the FCA. We started the FCA when we got out to Ponder. I know Mr. Coates here from when we moved out to Ponder. Started a football program. We started a wrestling program, touching people's lives. But let me tell you really kind of what was going on. The more we were becoming more active in growing God's kingdom, the more Satan became unsettled. And I became the target. Let me tell you how. Being an athlete my entire life, I've had 6 knee surgeries, 2 back, 1 shoulder and neck. So how I started dealing with that was innocent enough. Your sin starts innocent enough, I'll be honest with you. It always does. And of saying, who am I hurting? I started taking pain pills. I'd start with like half turned into 1, and I could still function. I'd go to work, and no one knew there was a problem. In the beginning, there was no problem. No one ever would blink. But young people, eventually, my half tablet turned into about 240 of those in about a week to a week and a half. See, my mom was a pill popper, and she could take a lot of pills, and I guess I got it from her, but I could take a lot of pills. My pain pills went from pain pills to bars, Xanax. If you know anything about street talk, that's what it is. And also something called Soma. My innocent enough was getting out of control, and I had nowhere to go. But yet I walked the walk. Or I talked the talk, let's say that. My wife did not know what to do, and here's what she opted to do. May 2008, I'd been named the head football coach at Christian School in Fort Worth. My dream job, and my ego by then was big enough because I was no longer cross-centered. I was Coach Smith-centered. My world evolved around me. And I felt I was somebody. It's funny how we get our identity. And versus being a child of a king, my identity became that coach and that ring on my finger. So the more I heard praise about me, the more it took the focus off really who gave me that talent. Well, I got named that head football coach. We're getting ready to go in the summer, start training for our first varsity season. I'd gone to work trying to get my coaches ready. Got a call from a neighbor. And he said, "Hey, Coach, are you moving?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's trucks at your house and they're loading up." Young people, my wife took my kids and was gone. My innocent enough got so out of control with those pills and some of the choices. all she knew to do was run, take those kids, get them to a safe place. Best thing she could do. All of a sudden, my world was falling apart. I had a pastor, and he was actually my pastor in Mount Gilead coaching. My wife's gone, my kids are gone, I'm by myself. I didn't have much of a family life. And he said, Coach, you got to hit rock bottom. I said, how much worse? Rock bottom, here I am. He said, you're not there yet. And you know what, young people? He's exactly right. So here I am, my wife's gone, my kids are gone, I got an addiction, now I'm a drug addict. Hey, we'll call it what it is. Just because they've been prescribed to you doesn't make you a drug addict. It's called a legal addict. That's a good street term for it. It's called a legal addict. They're gone and my health is failing. Young people, I'm 45 years old and I've got a defibrillator and a pacemaker in my chest now. That's what keeps me alive today. Because of my sin, innocently enough. Well, that pastor was right. I was still trying to call the shots. To us, and Mike will agree, rock bottom is a spiritual awakening when you got no more cards to play. You know, you got him. But hey, amen, that's all you need, right? But we don't realize that. We talk about God, but I got to experience up close and personal. I used to teach young people like Coach Lowe all the time about God, but one thing I was lacking, I'd never experienced God. It's a big difference. Well, all of a sudden, trying to call the shots, now I'm getting drug tested. So I can see my 3 boys, I'm getting drug tested. The great Coach Smith is getting drug tested. Tested clean, trying to keep it together. Had people still saying, hey, here's what you need to do. I didn't want to hear it. I said, I got this. Let me tell you how much I had it. Our first scrimmage game of the season, it was August 16, 2008. I tested clean, so I had my boys with me. We went out to Perrin-Wood, had a scrimmage game. Between testing clean and seeing them, I went back to the doc, and he said, you're under a lot of stress. You probably need some Xanax. Being a drug addict, I said, well, I sure do. Well, if you're a drug addict, can't take just one. Hey, if 1 is good, 2 is good, 3's got to be better. Young people, let me tell you what happened. Between Perrin-Wood and Ponder, Texas, on FM 156, between Ponder and Justin, by that little park, Jeff, I hit an 18-wheeler. And those 3 boys were in my truck. I had just hit rock bottom. We walked away, but God had my full attention. He had my full attention. I lost the rights to those kids. Couldn't drive them, couldn't be alone. You know, we have that whistle around our neck. We tell people what to do. That wasn't the case anymore. I lost my whistle. I was being told every move to make. I went into rehab, halfway house, lost all my possessions. My marriage was done. Full, void, final. So, man, that's a sad story. It is a sad story. But here's the great part of that story. When I died unto me, and I let Him step in, truly step in, let me tell you what it is. It's called a carnal Christian is the life I was living. Never heard that term before. And that means Coach Smith sat on the throne, and he would kind of use God accordingly, kind of like Magic 8 Ball. But by now, I had nothing left to say, God, and in 24 hours after hitting that 18-wheeler, I said, God, I need to know if you're really there because right now I want to die. And that was true. I was going to take my own life. I ended up in rehab, made a phone call to a guy named Kent Daniels, turned out to be in California. He said, I'm on the way. He didn't tell me he's in California. A pastor named Kim Broadstreet knocked on my door, and they took me to rehab. But young people, here's what changed. When I got broken and humbled and started listening to people to say, here's how to be a good husband, a good dad, here's how to be a true Christ follower, here's how to stay cross-centered, things started changing in my life. I experienced God firsthand and personal. Said I'd never coach again, but God laughed, and He said, yes, you are, but it's going to be for me. Back in 2009, I ended up behind the razor wire up north at Gainesville State School. If y'all have ever heard of the big Faith Christian Gainesville State School movement, we were part of that movement. That's where I went to coach, and that's where, you know, God had another thing. That's where I learned the term real talk, is those kids that were locked up. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and I'm going fast, and I apologize. Maybe we can schedule another day that we have more time. But I feel this is something that you need to hear. Again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. You can have a good start and poor finish. But it's important you stay cross-centered. And that's what I want you to ask yourself today. Are you cross-centered? Or are you video game-centered? Are you boyfriend-centered? Are you girlfriend-centered? What evolves around your life? Is God truly first in your life? In my own glory, I lost sight of the cross. Best thing that ever happened to me is I was stripped of myself. Those bad things happen to you guys, and I hate that. But I'll be honest with you, but when God shows up and shows off, all things work for His glory. Got remarried 2 years ago. It's not my boy's mom, but somebody very good for my personality. My boys are alive and well. I've never been more happy in my life than I am, and I don't step on a football field except to share God's glory. That's it. I'm alive today. Every day I get up, I got one more day with that machine in my chest, and I'm thankful. I'm going to bring up a young man, and we only got 5 minutes. This young man was where I was, behind the razor wire, but he didn't work there. Me and him have a lot in common. Me and him are family. We know a lot of the same things because where we're at. In the last 5 minutes, I want you to hear him out. He's going to share it. But I want to ask you before I... Come on, Mike. Come on up. This is Mike Pena. He's released from TYC. That means Texas Youth Corrections. Youth Prison up in Gainesville. For choices that he made. Me, I had self-will. I made that choice to take those pills. But he's going to tell you real talk in 5 minutes, and I want you to listen because he ain't playing. Remember, we're with Rock Bottom Outreach. You can find us on Facebook. I'd love to shake your hand before we leave. Mike?
I'm Mike. I'm 17 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 17 years old. As he said, I was just released from TYC, which is a prison for youth from 10 up to age 19. I was released from Gainesville. When I first started, it was kind of like what they said. I didn't have a dad. When my dad was selling and using drugs, my dad wasn't there when I was born, and that reflected on my life real big. And then when my mom kicked my dad out, it's like she turned to using drugs and selling them because she seen how much money we put on the table. So growing up, that's all I knew was how to use and sell drugs. At the age of 10, I started smoking marijuana, which is weed if you not know it by that term. At the age of 10, that's when my life just went straight down the dirt. See, because when I was 10 years old, I'm blessed of being able to write music, writing lyrics, a rapper. That's what I can do. I can rap, I can sing, I can draw, but, you know, I didn't use them talents. I met an older fellow that's what I seen as a brother, as my role model in my life, you know, and when I caught my first felony charge when I was 12 years old. Possession of marijuana over 2 ounces in a drug-free zone. I started here in junior high, selling and using drugs. I was in the gang here in 7th grade, but I'm from West Texas, Amarillo. I was raised in Hereford. And my life went down the drain in middle school. A little kid selling and using drugs, because that's all I knew. And see, when I was 13 years old, I already had 2 other felony cases. I had a UMV, which is stealing cars, and aggravated assault. And see, yet they still didn't send me to TYC after 3 felony cases. Usually, sometimes people only get 1 and they're gone for 40 or 50 years. At age 11, I've seen it. An 11-year-old murder having 40 to 50 years on his back. And see, at the age of 13, right when I was released, my brother was killed. And then it was a light turned on, and that's when I went loose. You know, I left the gang that I was in, and I started my own clique. And then I went to my placement. First time I've been to a long-term placement, it was 6 months. And then right before I was released, my grandmother was not killed, but she had a liver failure, and she died. And I had the mind, and my heart was basically solid. You know, I didn't trust not a single soul no more. I didn't even trust my own mom. And, you know, I started this thing. I had 22 and 23-year-olds looking up to a 15-year-old. I ran it all. You know, I sold the most drugs. I was a drug lord in Hereford at 15 years old. I was selling drugs to a person. I'm selling to my dad, and then my dad would distribute. See, my dad didn't know he was selling drugs for me. I mean, nobody knew. My mom didn't know. My mom, my dad, my brothers, and my sisters today don't know my story. And that's whenever they finally said this is it. 3 months after I was released, I had over 150 violations in 3 months. And see, I couldn't handle it. Marijuana, painkillers, I was drinking codeine, I was drinking, all that wasn't helping, forget about what I had seen. Because my brother, he died in my arms. At 13 years old, I had a dead body laying in front of me. So, when they sent me to TYC, I got a year and a half. And I got saved in Brownwood because my great-grandmother had a heart attack, and it was like if I lost her, it was dead. So, that's when I got on my knees, and I decided, this is it, I'm going to change my life. And he did. My grandma was healed, and she's still alive today. I went from Mark to Brownwood up into Gainesville, and when I got to Gainesville, I joined the football team. I was on the football team, and I worked in the cafeteria. And, the experiences on the football team, it's amazing, because they said it was a long time that was the first team they ever actually had played like a team. This past year, when I was going to all the Gainesville games, there was 60-something. There was a game that I went to that they lost so bad that they had to stop it at the end of the third quarter. And see, we didn't have that. We made it all the way to Austin in the playoffs and met some, grown men. They were bigger than all of us. But people's testimonies are stronger in there than mine. I mean, mine's just a piece of what people in there have to say. And, when I was in there and I was getting released, I didn't find out, I found out right a couple of weeks when I was supposed to be released that I didn't have nowhere to go. So they extended me 6 months for that and a drug group that I had to do. And now I can say we fought the state for 10 months to get me down here. My new mom is sitting right there. My mom is still in West Texas, and that's my new mother. But see, when I was released, we had beat the state. I was coming home. My great-grandmother, had another heart attack, and this time she wasn't supposed to make it. And, at that point I was ready to go, and I was ready to leave. But I was blessed, and I got to go see her. And, when I found out I was coming here, a deal in Oklahoma City, a radio station. That same day, I found out my cousin was shot in his head. Just this past week, this last Monday, he was shot in his head, but you know what? He did not die. He's in a coma. And they said the only reason why he might not make it is because the fragments where they shot him, that hit his brain. The bullet didn't go through his brain. So, even today, I'm still getting blessed with some things that some people don't never experience. And I'm about to say I'm a changed man.
Amen. Hey, wrap it up. I know you guys got to go. Again, ask yourself, is your life cross-centered?
Take a seat. Take a seat. Let it finish. Okay? You're not going anywhere. It's 8 o'clock. Okay? Just 1 minute.
Hey guys, if you feel your life is not cross-centered, meaning God's not first in your life, you have some stuff going on, I encourage you to give Coach Lowe and talk to him and say, hey, how can I be cross-centered? What will it take for me to get my feet firmly planted with God again? The worst thing you can do is say nothing. So hey, I appreciate you letting us come this morning. Y'all have a great day, and just get with Coach Lowe.
Awesome. Thank you.